I always thought the hardest part of losing my husband would be the silence, the empty side of the bed, the echo of his laughter in the kitchen, the way the house seemed to sigh without him. But nothing prepared me for the day I sat in that cold wood-paneled office, surrounded by his family, and listened as the lawyer read his will. My heart pounded in my chest, hope and dread tangled together, as line after line was read aloud. His company, the one we'd built together from the ground up, was left entirely to his siblings. The house, the cars, the investments, every last asset, all handed over to them. And me. I was handed a single, dust-covered painting, its frame chipped and canvas faded, as if it had been plucked from a forgotten corner of the attic. I remember the way his sister smirked, the way his brother avoided my eyes. I felt invisible, erased from the story of the man I loved. The lawyer's voice was flat, almost apologetic, as he slid the painting across the table toward me. "Your husband wanted you to have this," he said, as if it were a consolation prize. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but all I could do was stare at the painting, numb and humiliated. But as I clutched that old frame to my chest, something inside me refused to let go. There was a weight to it, a sense of purpose. I couldn't explain. I didn't know it then. But hidden behind that faded canvas was a secret, a single photograph that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my husband, his family, and the life I'd been left behind to piece together. And what I found inside would change everything, not just for me, but for all of us. When I first met Daniel, I was 26 and still learning how to trust the world. He was older, confident, and had a way of making everyone in the room feel seen. We met at a charity gala. He was there on behalf of his family's business, and I was working the event, pouring wine and collecting empty glasses. He asked me about my dreams, and for the first time in years, I found myself answering honestly. He listened, really listened, and by the end of the night, I felt like I'd known him forever. Our relationship moved quickly, but it never felt rushed. Daniel was my anchor, my safe place. He encouraged me to go back to school, to pursue my art, and when he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. His family, though, was another story. They were polite at first, but always distant, as if I were a guest who'd overstayed her welcome. His mother, Evelyn, would compliment my dress, but never ask about my life. His brother, Mark, would shake my hand, but never look me in the eye. I told myself it didn't matter that Daniel and I were building something of our own. When Daniel decided to start his own company, I was his first and only employee. We worked late into the night, fueled by takeout and big dreams. I handled the books, the marketing, the endless paperwork, while he focused on clients and strategy. We celebrated every small victory together, from landing our first contract to moving into a real office. I believed with all my heart that we were partners in every sense of the word. But as the company grew, so did the distance between me and his family. They started showing up more often, offering advice and opinions, always with a hint of condescension. "It's so nice that you help out," Evelyn would say, as if I were a volunteer rather than a co-founder. At family gatherings, I was the outsider, the one who didn't quite fit. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that love was enough, that Daniel saw me for who I was. Looking back, I can see the cracks that were already forming. There were times when Daniel would come home tense, his phone buzzing with messages from his siblings. He'd brush off my questions, saying it was just business, nothing to worry about. I wanted to believe him, to trust that our bond was unbreakable. But sometimes, late at night, I'd lie awake and wonder if I was truly part of his world, or just someone passing through. Still, I never imagined things would end the way they did. I thought that after all we built together, after all the sacrifices and late nights, I'd have a place in the legacy we created. I pictured us growing old together, watching the company thrive, maybe even passing it on to our own children someday. I never once considered that I could be written out of the story entirely. That's why the reading of the will hit me so hard. It wasn't just about the money or the company. It was about belonging, about being seen and valued. I thought I was Daniel's partner, his equal. But in the end, it seemed I was just a footnote in his family's history, a supporting character, in a story that was never really mine. And as I sat there clutching that old painting, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd ever truly belonged at all. The days after the will reading blurred together, each one colder than the last. I tried to keep busy sorting through Daniel's things, answering condolence cards, and fielding awkward phone calls from distant relatives. But the silence from his family was deafening. No one called to check on me. No one asked if I needed help. Instead, I heard whispers, quiet conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Glances exchanged over my head as if I were invisible. One afternoon, I found Evelyn in Daniel's office, rifling through his desk drawers. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I'm just gathering some of Daniel's personal effects for the family," she said, her tone clipped. I wanted to ask what she was looking for, but something in her posture warned me not to. Instead, I stood there feeling like a trespasser. In my own home later that week, Mark showed up with a manila envelope and a forced smile. "We need you to sign some paperwork," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Just some legal stuff to transfer the company assets." I stared at the stack of documents, my name printed in bold letters at the bottom. "I thought Daniel and I owned the company together," I said quietly. Mark's jaw tightened. "Daniel was the sole owner. It's all in the will. We're just following his wishes." His words stung, each one a reminder of how little I truly knew about the man I'd married. I started noticing other things too. The locks on the office were changed without warning. My company email was deactivated. When I called the accountant to ask about our finances, she told me, "I'm sorry, but I've been instructed to direct all inquiries to the new management." The word management echoed in my mind, hollow and final dot at home. The painting sat propped against the wall, a silent witness to my unraveling. I found myself staring at it for hours, tracing the faded brushstrokes with my eyes, searching for meaning. It was a landscape, rolling hills, a crooked fence, a sky streaked with gold. I remembered seeing it once in Daniel's childhood home, hanging in the hallway near the stairs. I wondered why he'd left it to me, of all things. The contrast between my memories and my reality grew sharper with each passing day. I remembered the way Daniel used to defend me at family dinners, the way he'd squeeze my hand under the table when his mother made a snide remark. Now, I was alone, surrounded by people who saw me as an inconvenience, a loose end to be tied up and forgotten. One evening, I overheard a conversation between Evelyn and Mark in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but the words carried. "She's not going to make trouble, is she?" Evelyn asked. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on," Mark replied. "The will is airtight. She got what Daniel wanted her to have." I pressed my back against the wall, my heart pounding. Was this really what Daniel wanted? Or was there something I was missing? I started to question everything: my marriage, my place in Daniel's life, the choices I'd made, replayed our last conversations, searching for clues, for any sign that he'd been planning this. Had I missed something? Had I been blind to the truth? The final straw came when I received a letter from the family's lawyer, informing me that I had 30 days to vacate the house. The property now belongs to the estate. The letter read, "Please make arrangements to remove your personal belongings." I sat on the floor, the letter trembling in my hands, and felt a wave of anger rise up inside me. This wasn't just about money or property, it was about erasing me, rewriting the story so that I never existed. But as I looked at the painting, something shifted. I remembered the weight of it in my hands, the way Daniel's eyes had lingered on it. The last time we'd walked through his mother's house, maybe, just maybe, there was more to this story than I realized. And for the first time since Daniel's death, I felt a flicker of hope, a sense that the answers I needed were closer than I thought. The day of the will reading is burned into my memory, every detail sharp and unforgiving. I remember the way the air in the lawyer's office felt heavy, as if it were pressing down on my chest. The room was crowded with Daniel's family of Ellen in her tailored suit, Mark with his arms crossed, and Daniel's younger sister Julia scrolling through, her phone barely pretending to care. I sat at the end of the long mahogany table, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to steady my breathing. The lawyer, Mr. Hargrove, cleared his throat and began. His voice was measured, almost clinical, as he read through the formalities. I tried to focus, but my mind kept drifting to Daniel, his laugh, the way he used to squeeze my shoulder when I was nervous, the promises we'd made to each other late at night. I clung to those memories, certain that, whatever else happened, Daniel would have made sure I was taken care of. But as Mr. Hargrove continued, my certainty began to crumble. To my beloved wife, I leave the painting that hung in my childhood home. He read, his eyes flicking up to meet mine for a brief, apologetic moment. To my mother, Evelyn, I leave the family home and all its contents. To my brother, Mark, and my sister, Julia, I leave full ownership and control of the company, as well as all associated assets. The words echoed in my ears, each one a blow. I felt the blood drain from my face. The company, our company, gone. The house, the savings, everything we'd built together, handed over to people who had never truly accepted me. I waited for you, some kind of explanation, a letter, a message, anything that would make sense of this. But there was nothing. Sitting on the table in front of me, as if it were a joke I didn't understand. Evelyn's lips curled into a small, satisfied smile. Daniel always did have a sentimental streak, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. Mark didn't even bother to hide his relief, already discussing next steps with the lawyer. Julia barely looked up from her phone, her indifference stinging almost as much as the betrayal itself. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I sat there numb as the meeting dissolved into a flurry of signatures and handshakes. No one looked at me. No one offered a word of comfort. I was invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of their celebration. When it was over, I gathered the painting in my arms and walked out into the bright afternoon sun. The world felt surreal, as if I were moving through water. I drove home in silence, the painting propped awkwardly in the passenger seat, its chipped frame digging into the upholstery. I kept glancing at it, searching for some sign, some hidden message from Daniel. Why this? Why only this? That night, I sat on the living room floor, the painting in front of me. I ran my fingers along the rough edges, searching for answers. Desperation clawed at my insides. I needed to understand. I needed to believe that Daniel hadn't simply abandoned me, that there was a reason for all of this. As I turned the painting over, noticed something odd, a small tear in the backing, barely visible unless you were looking for it. My heart pounded as I traced the outline with my thumb. Carefully, I peeled back the fabric, my hands shaking. Inside, tucked between the canvas and the frame, was a folded piece of paper. No, not paper, a photograph. I stared at it, my breath caught in my throat. I hadn't expected to find anything, but now, holding that photo in my hands, I felt a surge of hope and fear all at once. What was Daniel trying to tell me? What secret had he hidden away, trusting only me to find it? Didn't know yet, but I could feel the ground shifting beneath my feet. Whatever was in that photo, I knew it would change everything. The hours after I found the photo passed in a haze of disbelief and raw emotion. I sat on the floor, the painting beside me, the photograph trembling in my hands. My mind raced with questions, each one more desperate than the last. Why had Daniel hidden this? What did it mean? And why, after everything, had he left it for me to find? I pressed the photo to my chest, fighting back tears. The image was old, the colors faded, but the faces were unmistakable. Daniel stood in the center, younger and thinner, his arm around a woman I didn't recognize. Beside them was a little boy, maybe 5 or 6, with Daniel's eyes and a shy, uncertain smile. On the back, in Daniel's handwriting, were the words, "For when the truth matters most." Grief and anger warred inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw the painting across the room, to demand answers from a man who could no longer give them. I felt betrayed all over again, not just by Daniel's family, but by Daniel himself. How could he keep something like this from me? How could he leave me alone to piece together the fragments of a life I thought I understood? Meanwhile, the world outside my grief moved on without me. I heard laughter drifting from the kitchen as Evelyn and Mark toasted their new roles as company. Heads. Julia's car pulled up in the driveway, her music blaring, as she called friends to celebrate her windfall. Their joy was a knife twisting in my gut, a reminder of how little I mattered to them. I was a shadow in my own home, a nuisance to be swept aside. I tried to reach out to find some anchor in the storm, called my best friend Sarah and told her everything, the painting, the photo. She listened quietly, her voice gentle, but firm. "You have to find out who they are," she said. Daniel wanted you to know. Maybe this is your way to fight back." Her words gave me a sliver of hope, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. But the isolation was suffocating. Every room in the house felt colder, emptier. I wandered from room to room, clutching the photos, searching for clues. I found myself replaying old conversations with Daniel, looking for hidden meanings, for signs I'd missed. Had he ever mentioned a child? A woman from his past? I couldn't remember. The uncertainty gnawed at me, making it hard to breathe. That night, I lay awake, the photo on the pillow beside me. I stared at the ceiling, my mind spinning. I thought about the way Daniel's family had looked at me during the will reading, Evelyn's smug satisfaction, Cora's cold efficiency, Julia's careless indifference. They had everything they wanted now. Kay were celebrating, moving on, while I was left with nothing but questions and a growing sense of dread. But as the hours passed, my anger began to harden into resolve. I realized that the photo was more than just a secret. It was a key. Daniel had trusted me with the truth, even if he hadn't trusted me with his legacy. Maybe he knew his family would try to erase me, to push me out of the life we'd built together. Maybe this was his way of giving me the power to fight back. I got out of bed and stood in front of the painting, the photo clutched in my hand. I looked at Daniel's face, frozen in time, and whispered, "I don't know what you wanted me to find, but I'm going to find it. I won't let them erase me. I won't let them erase you either." As the first light of dawn crept through the window, I felt something shift inside me. The grief was still there, heavy and aching, but beneath it was a spark of determination. I didn't know what the photo meant yet, or how it would change things, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't done fighting. Not yet. The next morning, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt since Daniel's death. The photo was still on my nightstand, its edges worn from my restless hands. I studied the faces again, memorizing every detail: the woman's gentle smile, the boy's uncertain eyes, Daniel's protective arm around them. I knew I had to find out who they were and why Daniel had hidden them from everyone, including me. Asterisk, I started with the obvious: Daniel's old files. I spent hours sifting through boxes in the attic, searching for anything that might connect the dots. Most of it was business records, but tucked between two folders, I found a faded envelope addressed to Daniel in the same handwriting as the note on the photo. Inside was a letter dated nearly 20 years ago. My hands shook as I read it. Woman in the photo, her name was Maria, thanked Daniel for his help and promised to keep their agreement for the sake of her son, Lucas. She wrote about moving away, about starting over, and about Daniel's promise to support them from afar. My heart pounded. Was Lucas Daniel's son? Had he been supporting them in secret all these years? The implications were staggering. If Lucas was Daniel's child, he was the rightful heir to the company, something Daniel's family would do anything to keep hidden. I tried to confront Evelyn first, hoping for honesty. She looked at the photo, her face tightening. Grasping at straws, she said coldly, "Daniel was a good man, but he wasn't perfect. Don't drag his name through the mud just because you didn't get what you wanted." Mark was even worse, accusing me of fabricating evidence and threatening legal action if I continued to harass the family. Their gaslighting was relentless, making me question my own sanity. Asterisk, but I wasn't alone. Sarah, my best friend, offered to help me track down Maria and Lucas. She found an old address in a nearby town, and together we drove out, my heart in my throat the entire way. When we finally found Maria, she was older but unmistakable. She recognized Daniel's photo instantly, tears welling in her eyes. "He never stopped caring about us," she whispered. "He wanted to protect Lucas from his family's greed." Maria confirmed everything. Lucas was Daniel's son, and Daniel had always intended for him to inherit the company. He just hadn't trusted his family to honor his wishes. The will, the painting, the hidden photo-et was all a desperate attempt to ensure the truth would come out, even if Daniel wasn't there to see it. Asterisk, as I left Maria's house, the weight of what I'd uncovered settled over me. I knew what I had to do. The confrontation with Daniel's family was inevitable, and I was no longer afraid. For the first time since Daniel's death, I felt powerful. I had the truth, and I was ready to use it. What happened next would change everything for me. for Lucas and for the company Daniel had built from nothing. I walked into the family's boardroom with the photo and letter clutched tightly in my hand, my heart pounding but my resolve unshakable. Evelyn, Mark, and Julia were already there, their faces a mix of annoyance and thinly veiled anxiety. Could see the calculation in their eyes, the way they tried to size me up, as if I were still the outsider they could easily dismiss. But this time, I wasn't here to beg for scraps or explanations. I was here for the truth. I placed the photo on the table, sliding it toward them. "This is Lucas," I said, my voice steady. "Daniel's son, the rightful heir to the company." For a moment, no one spoke. Evelyn's face went pale. Her lips pressed into a hard line. Mark's eyes darted from the photo to the letter. His jaw clenched. Julia looked away, her bravado crumbling. "You're lying," Mark spat. But his voice wavered. "Daniel would have told us. He would have told me." I shook my head. "He didn't trust you. He didn't trust any of you to do the right thing. That's why he left this for me to find. He wanted Lucas to have what was his by birthright, not to be erased by your greed." Evelyn tried to regain control, her voice icy. "You have no proof this changes anything. The will is clear." I met her gaze, refusing to back down. "The will is only as strong as the truth it's built on. I've already spoken to Maria. She's willing to come forward. And if you try to fight this, I'll take it public. The company's reputation, your reputations, are you willing to risk it all just to keep me quiet?" The silence that followed was heavy, charged with the weight of years of secrets and resentment. Finally, Julia broke it, her voice small. "What do you want?" I took a deep breath. "I want what Daniel wanted. Lucas deserves his place in this family and in this company. I want you to acknowledge him, to give him what's rightfully his, and I want my own name cleared. I won't be painted as the villain in Daniel's story." So there was no dramatic reconciliation, no sudden outpouring of forgiveness. Mark stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Evelyn sat in stony silence, her world crumbling around her. But Julia, for the first time, looked at me with something like understanding. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for everything." In the weeks that followed, the company's lawyers began the process of recognizing Lucas's claim. It wasn't easy. There were battles, both legal and personal, and not everyone accepted the new reality. But I stood my ground, no longer afraid of being erased. I found myself again, not as Daniel's widow or the family's scapegoat, but as a woman who had fought for the truth, no matter the cost. Some bridges were burned forever, but others unexpectedly began to mend. I reached out to Lucas and Maria, offering support and guidance as they stepped into a world that had once been closed to them. In helping them, I found a new sense of purpose, a reason to move forward. The outcome was bittersweet. I lost the life I thought I'd have, but I gained something far more valuable: my voice, my dignity, and the knowledge that I had honored Daniel's true legacy. And as I watched Lucas take his first steps into the company boardroom, I knew that, in the end, the truth had finally found its place. Looking back, I never could have imagined that a single, dusty painting would unravel the life I thought I knew and help me build something stronger in its place. There were moments when I felt utterly alone, betrayed not just by Daniel's family, but by the man I loved. I questioned my worth, my memories, and even my sanity. But in the end, it was the search for truth that saved me. It forced me to confront uncomfortable realities, to stand up for myself, and to fight for what was right, even when it meant letting go of the past I'd clung to so tightly. I learned that family isn't always defined by blood or marriage, but by loyalty, honesty, and the courage to do what's right. I learned that silence and secrets can be just as damaging as open betrayal, and that sometimes the only way to heal is to shine a light on the things we're most afraid to face. Most of all, I learned that my voice matters, that I am not invisible, and I never have to be again. If you're watching this and you've ever felt erased, overlooked, or betrayed by those you trusted most, I want you to know you are not alone. Your story matters, and your truth is worth fighting for. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Sometimes the answers we need are hidden in the most unexpected places, waiting for us to be brave enough to look. As for me, I'm still learning, still growing, and still finding my place in a world that looks nothing like I expected. But I'm stronger now, And I know that whatever comes next, I have the power to face it head on. And if you think this story was wild, just wait until you hear what happened when I finally opened the second envelope Daniel left behind. But that's a story for another day.